Well, welcome back to the messy workbench here. Still working on the Union Station project. I've been working on these walls for the clock tower. You can see I've got 4 of them here. This one's a little short because that one is going to go in the back of the station. It's going to be flush with this wall, so eventually I'll have to trim this to match the gable in the back of the station there. But the idea here, you can see what's happening. Clock tower walls will go in here. I'm going to move these lights out of the way. I'm kind of approaching this in a little different way because I've had so many troubles with fully built up walls that don't quite match up at the corner. So I'm starting out with just this first layer of the walls, and I'm going to actually glue these together to make the 4 sides of the clock tower, and then go ahead and add on all of these exterior trim pieces, hoping that way I can get a nice square wall and all the joints will come together nicely. Otherwise, if I'm building the complete wall, I wind up with these kind of oddly matched corners that don't quite come together very well. You might have seen some of those problems earlier in the video series. So that's where I'm at for now. We'll get these glued together and we'll start making the tower here. I've got to move these lights out of the way. Just right, of course, right as soon as I put these lights in, I got to move them. I wasn't thinking ahead far enough to make room for those for the walls here. So these will have to come out a little bit and make room for the clock tower. This is just kind of the lower part of the clock tower. There'll be one more part above it you can see here in the plan. So this will go all the way down to the floor of the station, and the first part of the clock tower, and then the second part will build in a little while here. But for now I'm just trying to get these 4 walls together and kind of frame up the tower. Alright, well, here I've got the 4 walls for the lower part of the clock tower put together, and it's surprising to me how, as careful as I try to be, how much fudging I have to do to make things come together and be square and join up correctly. You can see all kinds of little filler pieces I've had to add in here to make up for my crooked work here. So I hope I've got this pretty much square and to the right size. And looking again at the back of the station here, I've cut this wall just a little high here so I want to make this back wall flush with the existing back wall, and I hope this doesn't end up looking too goofy. I'll end up having to put just a little bit of a roof section here in front of that. But I've moved the wires out of the way so I can set this piece down inside here, and I'm going to start working on all the trim pieces to kind of dress this up to look the same here. But now that I've got these 4 walls put together, I'm going to have to do a little sanding and filling just to square these up and make sure they're lining up with everything and all the gaps are filled. But it's going to be interesting to see how this works out with trying to put all the trim pieces on the outside, and I'll actually build up the corners here so I won't have these odd looking corners like I did on other parts of the project. So curious to see how that's going to turn out. I'm going to do a little more sanding and filling in on this piece here just to get it all squared up and ready to go for applying the additional trim pieces to it. So that's the clock tower so far. There'll be another piece on top of here to close off this opening on the top. Alrighty, we're starting to fill in the arches here on the top of the clock tower. And you can see all kinds of little hodgepodge pieces put into the tops here to kind of fill in the gaps. Previously I was making these arches in sets of 3 or 4, whatever I needed. And found out doing this way, well, let's just stick them in there and sand them into shape and fill in the little parts that I can. And all this is going to get puttied and sanded, and we'll see how that turns out. But you can see all these little pieces I cut to fill in the top of the clock tower here with all these little arches that I've been put in here. And once we get this sanded or puttied and sanded, then it should look pretty good. We'll get all the gaps evened out here. I think it'll look pretty good when we're done. Alright, I've sanded all the arches on the top here, filled in all the gaps, and it's a little bit rough here and there, but I think additional trim pieces will cover up any little flaws here. I've also painted the inside a black color here to give it a little solidity inside. So pretty well smoothed out all these gaps and uneven spots on the arches around the top of the clock tower, and it's starting to look pretty good. So I'm going to start filling in all the trim pieces here in a little bit, and this probably won't take very long to finish this off now that I've got some of the hard work done of filling in all the gaps. The rest of it's all going to be just applying strips and similar to the construction of the rest of the station here to get all these little kind of detail parts in there. So it'll look similar to this opening here with the trim pieces once they're on. Alright, we got some of the trim on here for the clock tower. To kind of work the corners were a little tricky because I want to keep the trim pieces looking the same from one side to the other, and I had to do a little bit of experimenting to kind of come up with that effect. This side is actually layered with a few different pieces, and I'll have to try to sand that and get that to smooth out some so that it looks the same as this trim piece down the front here. So it didn't take long to put these in. I'm going to wait on the back side a little bit because I've got the roof from the lower part of the station to deal with there. So I'm going to leave this part blank here for now until I can actually figure out just exactly where that roof line is, and then I'll put in these trim pieces. So that's the way it looks right now. Okay, pretty well done with this phase of the clock tower. I've got all the trim pieces in here. I think the next step is going to be to paint this. I'm going to have to paint it because I want to be able to get the window glazing in here, because I'm going to have to put a cover over the top of this, and I won't be able to get inside there to put the detail parts on. So I'm going to go ahead and try to paint this. It'll be the first painted piece of the project. It'll be Kind of fun to see how that'll look once it's painted. I'm going to go with kind of an antique white color for this, because I kind of like the white color that the project is modeled in. So I'm going to go a little bit of an antique white, and then we'll kind of maybe try to stain it a little bit, make it look a little older and aged look to it. So, but that's pretty much complete clock tower, the base of it. And again, I've got another piece to build at the top. This little part here that you see here will actually have the clock in it. So that's the piece, next piece will go, and that'll come right up about here, be about maybe a 2-inch or so structure. So looking pretty good here. And on the back side, got all the parts done on the back, and this will fit right into the back of the station and snug it up right there like that. And I hope this thing doesn't look too goofy with the, I'll have to have a little bit of a roof piece in here to put the roof line in there. Again, this whole thing was kind of a afterthought to sort of expand the clock tower and try to make it look a little bit more robust and impressive. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this, and I'll come back and take a look at it after it's been painted. Well, here we are, first piece of this project to get a coat of paint. What do you think about that? How about that, huh? We're starting to paint. Ooh. So I got a few little things to touch up here. I'm gonna have to give this maybe a shot of dull coat, and then gonna try some little aging technique I've got in mind. I'm gonna try to give this just a real fine wash of black paint or gray paint, just to kind of try to make it look a little aged. So I'm going to experiment with that and see how that works. Alright, we're going to talk about some of the little details here that I'm going to work on. I've got some fiberglass window screen that I'm going to use in the windows of the station. It's a very nice material to work with. It's easy, cuts with a pair of scissors. This is fiberglass window screen. That's what I'm going to use for the little window frames in the station. And for the glazing, I ordered some transparency film. And very nice material to work with. It's awfully inexpensive. See the little sheet I've got here. I'm going to use this for the glazing of my windows. And again, a transparency film used to be for overhead projectors, I suppose. I don't know if those are still in use today, but it's a lot cheaper than acetate. So this is what I'm going to use for my windows. I'm going to fix some of the transparency film to the window screens here, and start making just a few little windows for the clock tower. You can see how fine that is. It makes nice little frames for the clock tower. Alright, what I've done here is I've cut some small pieces of window screen and attached them to some of the transparency film by using canopy glue, which is nice stuff for incompatible materials. The canopy glue will dry clear. You can see I got a little messy with the glue here, but it dries clear, so shouldn't see too much of a residue there once it's dry. And then these will be cut and put in behind my windows here. So take a look at that, see how that looks in a bit. Okay, I got some windows in here. You can see a little bit of the frames there, the glazing. And I've also tried a little bit of a really thin gray wash on the back of the station, the back wall of the station here. And it's a very thin wash here that I'm trying to apply to the back of the station here. I don't know if the light's giving you a good look at that, but you can kind of see the difference from, say, this side to this side. And kind of like the way it looks. I'm gonna have to do a little more weathering, I think, a little more might use some chalks to bring out a little more of the weathering in the back here, but I just want to try one small area in the back in case it got all botched up. Maybe I could repaint this little spot. But kind of get a look at what the finished surface might look like here. It's kind of fun to paint this now and finally experiment with some colors and some finished look to this station here. And the rest of the station will be painted in a similar way. I'm going to give it a coat of antique white and a little bit of dull coat, and then a real thin wash of gray paint I'm putting on with a large bristle brush. I'll show you what I'm doing with this. Just real big strokes with big brush here, and downward strokes to kind of get that sort of downward wash look on the side of the building. I'm going to come back here with some chalks and try to bring out more of the detail here, but this is the first glimpse of what the finished station might look like. I'm going to come back here with some more little frames for the upper windows here and fill those in. But for now, I think the video's gotten pretty long again, and we'll continue working on the clock tower. I thought I might be able to finish it in this video, but it's a little apparent I'm running out of time here to work on things this month in order to get the monthly journal out on time. So I'm going to leave it here for now, and we'll pick up more on the clock tower and finishing details here in the next video. So appreciate you hanging out there with me. I hope you're enjoying the series. I hope you're enjoying learning something here with my little scratch build project here. I certainly am. So thank you very much for coming by and hanging out with me again. And we'll continue with this project in the next video. So thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for coming. Thanks for staying. Thanks for watching.